Hello, and thank you for joining me on this week's episode of Women of Color and Confidence. I am your host, Amber Rose West, and today I'm going to be interviewing tax strategist JC Morgan. I've been following JC online for a couple of years now, and I've been super inspired by the wealth of knowledge that she has to share with the people on her page, especially women of color. One of the best messages that I've received from her is that women who look like me and look like her, who may not have a firm grasp or understanding on the different financial systems that we have in place today, that she is there as our tax bae to help us understand a little bit better the different institutions that we could very much benefit from, the different resources that we could benefit from. If we just had a little bit more knowledge about what those systems are and how we can use them to our benefit. So we're going to chat with her about her wealth of knowledge and her business. We also dove a little bit deeper into the confidence that she's had to have as a Black woman in this particular career field in terms of finance and teaching other people how to understand the different systems that are in place that act as barriers to our ability to access resources that other people are very easily able to access. And so we are going to talk about imposter syndrome. We are going to talk about perfectionism. We are going to talk about what it means to create a toolbox to handle specific barriers and hindrances that you may have to your self-confidence, and what has worked for JC in her life and in her career. Super excited to dive into this chat, so let's get started. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Women of Color and Confidence. My name is Amber Rose. Thank you for joining us today. I am joined by accountant and aficionado JC Morgan. Today, we are going to be talking about financial literacy and, of course, generational wealth from the perspective of people of color. We have a lot of good information here in this episode today, so I want to jump right into it. Before we get started, I'm going to toss it over to JC and allow her to introduce herself. JC, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I've been this has been a long time coming. So thank you so much for inviting me. So like you said, my name is JC Morgan. My business is Create Accounting Services. I'm a solopreneur. I work with a few subcontractors to obviously help me get some stuff done, but I'm a tax strategist, accounting, bookkeeping. I really do all of the things, all of the accounting things, and then specialize my engagements to the specific entrepreneur. So everyone gets what they need.
I absolutely love it. I've had the honor of a phone call with you, and you really helped illuminate a lot of things that I felt like I didn't know. Not even just as an entrepreneur, but as a single solo woman handling my finances on my own. Running my business, all of those things as they started to come together, I was like, wow, she is such a wealth of knowledge. And, it has been a long time coming. I've been wanting you on this show for a long, long time. You were like on the top of my dream team list. So I'm super excited to just have you share today. One of the things I really loved about chatting with you is I felt like I was talking to someone that was like extremely knowledgeable, as like a conversation I felt like I would have if I walked into a bank, or if I walked into someone who was going to sell me stocks and bonds and stuff. And you were so
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I felt like as I was talking to you, I was like, I really like this person. I really feel like there's this energy of, yeah, I have a lot of knowledge and I'm here to share it with you, but also that it felt really good to get it from you, specifically. So okay, great. So first and foremost, I would love to talk to you about what made you want to go into accounting.
I grew up poor and I thought accountants were rich. So I figured if I become an accountant, then I'll never be poor again. Well, obviously that's not how it worked out. But I was very intrigued. I've always been very intrigued with numbers, with money, and I always knew there was a way. These people have money and these people don't. What is the connection here? And so I took my first accounting class in high school and I was like, this is it. This is going somewhere. And I was just a super nerd. Like I loved balancing my checkbook, and I did my own, I've always done my own taxes. I think there was 1 year exception. I took it to H&R Block, but since high school, I've done my own taxes. And so it just really came naturally for me, really. I'm a Libra, so maybe I blame it on that, the scale. It just all coincides with who I am. And then the main reason I always felt very passionate about it is because I knew there was a system that could help, that could really help even out the economic gap and and bring justice to folks in ways that we have not yet seen. So I realized that the tax code is one of those ways that create intentional barriers between white Americans and Americans of color. So just an all combination of things that just like fell into me as a person.
Yeah. I love that it started early with you too. And it's really interesting. I love that you were like, accountants work with money, so they must be rich.
Yeah.
I do think that there is that idea of like, well, if you want more money, be around more money.
Yeah.
I think is a real thing.
Yeah.
What I love about what you teach is that you're like, yeah, okay, yeah, like if you want more money, be around more money, but also learn about money and the way that like we haven't necessarily been taught. We'll talk about that a little bit more in the episode. So in terms of your business, like I love that you had this passion and you were like kind of nerdy and you went after and everything. In terms of the business in itself, was there a specific like purpose or passion behind like, I'm going to have my own business, my own service?
Yeah. So when I was in public accounting, my first job in college, really very nice public accounting firm. If you think of public accounting, that's what it was. And I was an auditor there, and we audited HUD financial statements and affordable housing financial statements. And so I had the opportunity to work with, kind of be a liaison and see the books, the back end system of how government contracts are given to certain investors and certain companies. And then I got to see the back end of how those contracts were audited. And then I'm seeing the gap between the investors and the company and the people who are receiving these HUD vouchers. Mm-hmm. So I'm feeling in the middle. So at this point, I started to feel something that just felt like I wasn't, it felt off, because I go into these housing developments that need substantial work. People need, a better way of living. And then I go to my office and I'm working with these corporate executives who have everything that these people need in these housing developments. And they're simply only there to get this government contract so they can get money. And I was like, I just can't do this anymore. Right. So that's really when I realized there's something more to this that I should explore.
Yeah. Definitely an imbalance there, and an imbalance that's been there for a long time. And it's interesting too to think about the imbalance between like residential and something like commercial or government, right? Yeah. And then just how like those resources aren't coming down to those of us who could also build residential.
Absolutely.
As well. I love it. Well, I definitely know I'm grateful to have you in the industry. I feel like I've had my business for 5-6 years now, and still have a hard time finding people that I trust to give me reliable information when it comes to like finances and taxes and how to really do it proper. Like business coaches are really great and that kind of thing, but you really need someone who's specialized in this field and area. Absolutely. To get you to where you want to be. And it's great to have someone like you who can see those disparities and be like, oh, we're gonna work on changing that right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And you made a really great point, because business coaches are really great. Sales coaches and marketing and those things are really great. And I think sometimes entrepreneurs kind of separate themselves from businesses so much they forget in a business you have these different functions of the business. So you have an accounting department, marketing, sales, et cetera, and it's foundational to have an accountant, a tax person, somebody who's in your corner and can help you get things up and running and funded. Those things are so foundational, and sometimes it does hurt my heart when I see people pouring into programs where they're not getting results because they're trying to spin their wheels on getting sales, and then when they get these sales, they don't know what to do with this money, or they're highly taxed. And so I'm like, hey guys, I'm over here. I can help you with that.
Yeah. And I've worked with many business coaches, and I think that I've been a coach, not a business coach, but I've worked with people on creating their programs and that kind of thing. And I did realize about halfway through my coaching career that business coaches who are helping you build a business will kind of say like, oh, well, I'll teach you that part. And then they get this like, it's like they're not educated in it enough to actually help in that. And I think that, we as entrepreneurs really have to realize that there are different coaches, mentors, and companies and services that you need to invest in order to make sure that like your business is running well. And
Absolutely.
While a business coach is really great in helping you like build the business and find your clientele, well, then there is this like, and don't get me wrong, I get it. It's very unsexy. Like for those of us who are not good with numbers and not good, we're just like, well, like we'll deal with that later, or like something like that. But starting it from the foundation of it, and really having, I think this is true for anything that goes along with a business. Like you don't have to be the best or most knowledgeable marketer. You don't need to be the best or most knowledgeable accountant. But you need to understand that at some point in your business, you're going to have those things solid. And that's why, like looking at people like you, or looking at, copywriters or marketers, whatever it is, you realize that like these people are way better. They're more knowledgeable. There's a reason that they have a business, and that you have to branch out and make sure that those pockets of your business are taken care of.
Absolutely.
So, okay, you mentioned the tax code. This is something that still goes a little bit over my head. So I'm really excited to kind of hear straight from your mouth what it is, why it's important. And I've seen lately that in your programs or offerings that this has become like a very prominent thing that you're teaching right now. So can you explain a little bit about what the tax code is, and then maybe share with us why you're passionate about educating people on it?
Well, essentially, don't get too like buzzed up about the word tax code, but that's just me telling you the tax system and how it works. So I can completely understand why that would be a little bit like, what does that mean? But it's just the set of rules and regulations, your credits, your deductions, all of the tax effects of your business, how they're applied to how you're running your business. So I mentioned, I think I mentioned on my questionnaire how the tax code can be used to benefit women of color and single mothers and Black women. And so here's a really great example that I've seen other single mothers do and I've done myself. So typically throughout the year, say you're right before you're getting ready to start your business, year one, you're starting your business, and you're most likely getting a W-2 job. When I do tax returns for clients who are single parents or have multiple children, and I see them get back $10,000, $11,000 in a tax refund, I encourage them to use that refund to reinvest back into their business. That's using the tax code to your advantage.
Yeah.
Okay? That's you starting. You don't have to go out and ask for a loan. You don't have to go out and ask for a grant. You're literally using the money the government is giving you, and you may not have even paid into. Here's the thing: you may not have even paid into the tax code. You can get your tax return to be. If you can apply tax credits that are refundable. So you may have not have paid a single dime throughout the year. And some of those tax credits are refundable. That means you get them back. So you could not have paid anything and you get a refund of $3,000 to $6,000. Why would you not use that money to either hire an attorney to get all your documents together, or buy a new computer and then write it off? I'm just like, So these are the types of things that single women and single mothers can use because it's easily accessible to you. They've given these credits. They're not thinking. Here's the thing. The tax code was written by old white men who were thinking about white men. It was not written thinking about people of color or women. That's just a fact. Mm-hmm. And so whenever you come to a meeting and you have an intention, right? You have an intention, you're going to say, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. You're staying on that intention. So if their intention is to support other white male, what type of tax legislation will they bring to the table? Tax legislation that benefits them. So they didn't realize that, well, now it's just, things just, evolve over time. And then we realize, hey, I can also apply this to my situation, right, and it can benefit me. So it's things like that I like to teach people, like, hey, it wasn't meant for you, but this right here, this little part right here, that means you can do it.
I love it. Yes. And while we're living in a system that is still, built by white men, lots of money, where we're still trying to figure out where we fit into all of this and how we get our rights and how we get our equality. I know this is going to sound a little weird, but it brings me so much joy to find those little pieces.
Yeah.
Here it is. They didn't write it for us. They forgot. Yeah. They forgot that they put it in here, but this is it. This is it right here. And then it's like,
yep. Yeah. It was like a treasure you found. And that's why I get so excited about talking about taxes, because it legitimately feels like a treasure map for me. And I feel like I'm helping other people steps along the way, sort of like the Underground Railroad.
Yeah. Yeah. And, as, people are attempting to get out from this, I feel like the best way to say it is like the oppression that we're under right now. Like, how do we climb out of that? And all of these systems that are put into place to keep us in our place. So
yeah.
Right. And I'm the same as you. I actually really, really love not the puzzle part of it, right? Like, it's just like when I find something that I know can work and I want to share with other people, I'm like, this is how I like really want to serve my people.
Yeah.
And for things like the tax code, like those are things that I know for sure, Black entrepreneurs of color, it's like the very last thing on their list, I believe, because it is so complicated. I think it have to do with, setting up your business and getting your financial institutions into place and, learning how to, I remember the first time I had to pay taxes in my own business. And I was like, wasn't saving for that. Was not saving for that. And I literally had to like dig deep, and I had to work at a couple extra jobs here and there just to like pay my taxes back, because nobody had told me that I had to pay my own taxes that year, that it didn't just come out of my check or come out of my payment. And I was like, it seems so silly to think about now, but I was like, oh yeah, like that's the other end of it. I'm like, oh man. Yeah. So, these barriers that are created for us. And I do want to talk a little bit about, the barriers to financial resources that specifically like women of color could benefit from. And I know that, during the conversation I had with you, you had talked a little bit about like setting yourself up for like lending and, finding investors and that kind of thing. I didn't even know for a long time that these resources were available to me. And I feel like that's something that a lot of other entrepreneurs, especially white entrepreneurs, are just like taught, like do this, and to me, it was just so foreign. I'm curious, was your education about these resources something that was integrated into learning about the financial institutions and the processes and everything as you were gaining all this knowledge, or was it something that's a little bit newer that's being offered to us?
No, definitely learning through corporate, working for different organizations as the auditor. So an auditor is someone who comes in and reviews your books and ensures there's no misstatements, ensures that what you're stating on your financial statements is accurate and correct. So I spent all of my career really being an auditor. And so when someone, for instance, I was not an IRS auditor or an SBA, but these are types of things auditors would would do. When you submit your application, they review your documents and make sure that what you're saying on this application corresponds with all of your documents. It's just really putting the puzzle pieces together. And an auditor will then come in and say, is this company doing the right thing to gather and verify these numbers? So all of this information has come through school. I was not given the experience or the atmosphere environment of knowing about money or knowing about wealth. My mom taught me how to balance my checkbook, and I thought that was like the most brilliant thing ever. And that is the basis of what I learned. So it really didn't come into play until I went to college.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say that even a lot of what I learned, I didn't learn until after college. I think I got my real big lesson in like student loans, like getting that money and that kind or giving that money, having to repay that money. But like I had a bank account, but really the idea of doing things like saving didn't hit me until after college. Just like, oh, I got to spend this money on tuition and books and eating and rent and like all these things. And so the idea of even like saving or even understand like budgeting, it was just like what I had.
And that's really a good point, because even though I knew all of these things, and still there are things that I still cannot do or take advantage of because I don't have the resources to do them. So even though I knew how to budget, I don't know if you've ever seen like the hierarchy of self-realization, where at the bottom you have your most basic needs: food, clothes, shelter, love, friendship, etc. And then up here you have self-actualization, where you can take all of this great stuff that you have. Well, for a very long time, I'm stuck living here just trying to make ends meet, feed me and my children, keep the bills paid. And so it's things like that is a barrier. Like I can't take advantage. It's hard for me to take advantage of these opportunities. When I get my tax return, I got to pay up my rent. When I get my tax refund, I got to pay off all of these back bills. So I can invest in a business. So those are some barriers that women of color typically, and I'm saying this statistically because that's just what it is, women of color typically face versus other entrepreneurs who are not of color.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's so real. And I have to admit that I also grew up poor, and I never really thought that I would get to a place where I remember like when I was a teenager, when I finally had my first job, one of my dreams, and I remember it so clearly, was that I wanted to be able to go a week without looking at my bank account with worry. Like, do I have enough? Like, or trying to figure out what to spend my money on. Am I going to eat or am I going to buy books? I need new shoes, but I also need to pay my bills. Like it was one of those things where I remember dreaming about the day where I was like, I don't want to have to look at my bank account every week. And I definitely don't want to have to look at it and make hard decisions, And it was really interesting to me that not everybody lived that way. I was like, I just thought like everyone lives that way.
That was mind blowing to me too.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, I hang out with my white friends, I hang out with my friends who's like, they live in houses and like, their families all live in houses, and I'm like, we're still in this apartment building, and
or people will take me out to lunch, and I'm like, you can pay for this? Well, what are you going to do tomorrow? Like, are you still going to have enough money? I was like, yeah, it's no big deal. Like,
yeah. And it's interesting to like, I never thought about them as barriers, but at the end of the day, like this is like the basis of generational wealth, right? That like those things that do and don't get passed down. And I don't know. I just started learning a little bit more about what that meant. And then when I was like, oh, well, I can go make my own money and do this and do that and like all that stuff. And now to be like such an independent woman where, I do have contract jobs. I do have my own jobs. I do have my own clients. I'm making my own money and I don't look at my bank account with worry anymore. It's such there was such a duality between like what I was learning as a kid and experience as a kid and what I was able to grow as I got older. But it was definitely because I even understood these concepts of generational wealth. I understood these concepts of like the government has a hold on all the money. So you need to learn what and why and how and to make it work to your benefit. So I'm really grateful for your business and your knowledge, and also that there are women of color who are breaching into this field. Like, I feel the financial, I mean, I don't need to feel it. The history is there. The financial field has always been run by white men, especially rich white men who just keep generating this income and money for themselves. And it is time for us to get a piece of that pie, and to not just like take it and have it, but to also have the knowledge in our brains to pass it down to the generations to come, so that they can reap the benefit that our white fellowship has also been enjoying for centuries and generations.
Absolutely. Totally agree.
So I want to switch gears here, because okay, first of all, I loved seeing you light the fuck up when you were talking about the tax code. You were like, and another thing. Oh my gosh, it just warms my heart to see women talk about what they know, what they love, and you just watch the passion ooze out of them. Like, that just made my whole day. So I want to talk, like, let's transition a bit into the confidence portion of our chat, because I have been following you online for, gosh, I feel like it's been like 2 years or something now. I feel like it's been a long time since I've been following you. And I remember, like, not really, I know people think I'm like this confidence queen, but sometimes I see people online and I'm like, how do I send you a message? How do I talk to you? I want to know more about everything about you. And so it took me a little bit of courage to reach out to you, but I just love how, like, to the point, and how inspirational your posts are, and how they're always this reminder that, like, hey, you can be you and still benefit from these things. You can be you, and if you don't know about these things, but you want to know about these things, I can help you learn it. And I'm always like, I can be me and learn about money. Like, it just makes me feel
heck yeah.
I would love to hear from you about, what it means to you to post those things online. You're, like, so consistent, and you have this messaging that's super duper clear about what it is that you wish people knew. Like, you're just like, I just wish everybody knew this about this system. And I just, as you are, creating your content, how do you get the courage basically to, like, talk about this stuff and, like, talk to people about it online?
I believe in it. I believe in it so much. And when you just believe in your purpose here on earth, nothing can shake you. And my belief in it goes so deep. So I will tell you a little story about me that I don't talk about a lot online. My ancestors were slaves of John Randolph, who was a congressman in Mercer County, Virginia, and I believe he had some tingles. This guy was so odd. He had some tingles and tangles with Andrew Jackson, and he was considered not to be, some people suspect he was homosexual, and he did not support slavery. He did not support slavery. His slaves were inherited. So he inherited his slaves when his parents died. And at the time, that was a means of survival in economics, slavery. And when I'm telling the story, I just want all emotions to, like, not be in it, because these are just facts. So at the time, that was the means of economics in America. Well, when he died, he put in his will that he wanted his slaves to not only be free, but he also bought them a plot of land where they could go and live off of. Substantial amount of money at the time, and substantial amount of acres at the time. Long story short, his family contested the will. So when my ancestors, 394 of my ancestors, went to the land that was provided to them from John Randolph, his family contested it, and they were not able to settle there. Okay. Moreover, it was legally, and it was the land was legally stripped from them. So because of politics and people saying, I'm not going to vote for you if you let these Negroes stay here. This is all Googleable. As I'm talking, if people are listening, please Google John Randolph and the Randolph slaves and Randolph freed people. Everywhere you can find it. So people contested and said, if you let these Negroes stay here, we're not going to vote for you. We're going to kill them. You know how colonization is.
Yeah.
So we migrated to Ohio, which is where we settled in a small area called Rossville, Ohio. It's literally like a plot of land, okay? And it's near the city called Piqua in Troy, Ohio, where I grew up. And so many of my family still lives there. A big portion of my family still lives there. And so throughout the years, the only way to even be able to Google any of this stuff would be for people have written it down throughout the years and documented their accounts. All of my ancestors, we've been fighters. We've been documenting the accounts of us trying to get our land back, us going to the courthouse. Much documentation in public newspapers. It's a Ohio historical landmark. So it's just in my blood. It's undeniable in my blood that I want and need equality before I leave this earth. And on top of that, I realized, what would my life be different if we had that land? What would my life look like? My life would be so different right now. I would not be sitting here talking to you. And that coupled with my passion to give my kids everything they deserve. If I have a post that I'm going to post, it's coming from the heart. This is what I need to say. And I put it out there and let the universe do what it does.
Good. I love it. And I know I've told you this before, but I feel it all the time. I'm always in your comment section. I'm just like, this is the one. No, wait, this is the one. Oh, wait, this is also the one. All of it is so good. And you can definitely feel like the passion behind your messaging. And then it's like, it's got this 1-2 punch where it's like, well, here's the passion and here's the purpose. And it's like, it feels very purposeful for you, but also very purposeful in what you're offering the people that are reading it. It gets me every time, and I love it. Well, in terms of I
appreciate that feedback, by the way, because it's great to hear those great things, because, obviously our minds play tricks on us, and it's funny, and it'd be telling you don't be doing stuff. And so it's great to hear that feedback. I appreciate that.
Yes, of course. That's actually a really great segue into what I was going to ask you, because, one of the things that we had been talking about in terms of confidence creation and how you express yourself, I believe you express yourself very confidently, but we always know that expressing ourselves confidently, the other side of that is that we have to create that confidence first before we, express it outwardly to the world. And when I was talking to you about, the barriers or hindrances that you have to creating your own confidence, you said, sometimes I see myself in the red, and then I've had to learn how to move out of being in the red. And I would love for you to share with our listeners what being in the red means to you in terms of your confidence creation. And what are some of the things that you do to move out of it?
So as I was writing that, I remember my first time diving off of the high dive when I was a kid, and I jumped in. It was the high dive. I just begged my grandma to let me do it. Like, you got to let me do this. Okay. So I'm in the water, and I remember coming up, and I'm like, oh, I really might die. I really might die here. But I remember thinking to myself, and every other time, just keep swimming, just keep moving your arms, keep using what you have, and you'll either die or you'll get back up to the top. So I just keep that, just keep using my tools and my resources when I'm feeling in the red. One thing that I do is I go to trauma therapy. And that's one of my resources that I use. Having a schedule, just one step at a time when I'm in the red, really helps for me to look back and say, oh, I completed this, or I at least put my feet on the ground today. Just things where using my tools of all of the different things that I've learned about confidence and mindset and anxiety, depression, neurodivergence, trauma, all of these things that will help get me out of the red. If I just keep using those things, then typically I do. And I know inside of my mind, just keep doing it. Eventually you'll come out.
Love it. So what is being in the red for you?
So for me, that's extreme imposter syndrome. I told my mom on the way here today, she's like, "You're really smart." And I'm like, I always wince when people say that. Like, I always like, okay. And so I found that when I'm in the red, I'm just like, that's total bullshit. But when I'm in the red, I I feel so stuck with doubt that it's almost like I can't get any work done. I can't even like read an article without second guessing how I'm interpreting it. And so it feels physically, it feels like I'm going down a roller coaster, and it feels that gut, like it feels very like I'm not sure about this. So checking that, noticing it, and accepting that's what it is at the moment, and using my tools is typically how I get through it.
Wow, what an explanation. And I can definitely see how you described it as in the red. It's not something that I've heard before, and I think that everybody describes their experiences in the red a little bit
Mm-hmm.
differently, or they have a different description of what it is for them being in the red. The idea of imposter syndrome is very real, especially among women and women of color too, that are stepping out on their own to venture into a dream or a passion that originally felt inconceivable to them.
Yeah.
When they finally, I have this passion and this purpose, and I want to do something, then you do it. That imposter syndrome, there's, I equate the imposters a lot to the inner critics, and there's 7 different inner critic archetypes. So people feel different types of critics and inner critical voices, but they also feel different types of imposters. Love that you were like, my mom told me I'm smart, and I was like, and I was like, that's one of the first things that I said to you when we started our interview today. I was like, I just feel like you're so smart, and I've experienced it on a call with you, and then I watch you online. I'm like, you are smart. Like, why are you wincing at that? But it's one of those things that, the more that they tend to be true, the more that we tend to
Yeah.
try to make them not true. Or like, I don't
Yeah.
even, why would these 10 people say these things about me? Like,
Right.
can't be true. It's like your imposters are all in your head, and you're like, hey, you need to just get over there. Um, well, thank you for sharing the tools that you use too. I think that the more that people know the tools that can work or have worked for people as they're going through different parts of their confidence creation journey or even their entrepreneurial journey, that the different types of tools we all use. I like to tell people when I'm like with the clients that I'm working with, and people are like, how do I create more confidence? How do I do this? And I was like, hey, like we have to figure out first what makes you happy and what makes you confident. And then we can figure out the tools that go in your toolbox. But I
Mm-hmm.
believe that a lot of people work with confidence coaches who tend to just say, well, like, do your daily affirmations in the mirror, make sure you journal and meditate daily. Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, some of those things don't work for everybody. Like they probably work for you. And you're just like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, well, let me tell you my toolbox. And if you do it, it'll happen. But confidence is one of those things that is so individualized to the person. It's
Yes.
so
Yeah.
individualized. I wish more people understood this point too. It's so individualized to the different types of trauma, like, negative experiences, the negative people in your life. Having a negative sibling is way
Yeah.
different than having a negative parent. Having a
Mm-hmm.
bully that's, a teacher at school compared to a peer, two completely different types of bullying. So when you think about creating confidence, you really have to look at those barriers that you've had in your life to creating your confidence, and then say,
Yeah.
okay, well, what are the tools that are really going to address that? Because the tools that help me may not help you, right? You got to
Mm-hmm.
first figure out what that is. So this concept that you have of being in the red and what that looks like for you, and then knowing the tools you have in your toolbox, I love it. It's absolutely gorgeous, and I'm proud of you for having a toolbox. I think so many people think that confidence is one of those things that you achieve, right? Like, oh, I'm confident now, or I'm ready, or I don't have imposter syndrome
You
anymore.
gotta work on it.
Everybody's got to work on it, and they have to make sure that they have a toolbox that benefits them, and learning how to create that toolbox is so important. So thank you for bringing that up. So I just have a couple other things I want to chat with you about. So one of the things that you said in your questionnaire was that you always have this constant need for doing one more. And this is like a very perfectionist trait I wanted to talk about real
Yeah.
quick. Like that idea of like, I just have one more. I could do one more. I can make it just a little bit better.
Yeah.
Right. So how do you get over the one more thing?
I typically do one more. I'm not gonna lie. I typically just do it. Like I'm still in my healing journey. So
Yeah.
I was also an athlete. I was a gymnast. And so I have very much like discipline. Like when you say you're going to do something, you better get over there and do all of those reps. If you cheat in
Mm.
those reps, then you're going to have to run.
Mm-hmm.
And so a little bit of that comes from athleticism a bit. So any suggestions would be
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to offer a suggestion. One of the tricks that has worked for me and many of my clients is that I give myself a limit on how many times I can one more myself or how many times I can make something better. So the first time that I think it, I actually, part of my perfectionism is I hoard my writing. So like I'll write an email and then I'll read it and edit it and then read it and then scrap it and rewrite it again. And then I will like save it in a draft, but be like, maybe I'll put some fresh eyes on it in the morning. And it's
yeah.
like,
Okay.
you could have sent that email like 19 different times. And so when I get to that point where I find myself like rereading emails or editing too much, I go, okay, you're allowed to do 3 more edits. You're allowed to
Oh,
look at this 3 more times. And after that third time, it's fine. Like nobody's going to die because this email wasn't perfect, right? So
mhm.
this the like as I see myself getting into that spiral of like one more time, it's like, okay, one more time, but then that's your one more time. And then like that's it. And
Yeah.
so I've really learned how to just kind of like put a limit, like a editing limit or a one more time limit on myself. And it really does help because once you give yourself that one more time and you like let it go or you like do it one more, you make it just a little bit better and then you let it go and then you realize that like everything was fine. Everything
Yeah,
was
nothing
okay.
fell
Like nothing like
apart.
crazy happened because it wasn't. I didn't edit it 5 more times to make it absolutely perfect. Like then you're just like, oh okay. And the more you practice that, the more it kind of like allows you to recognize the one more time, or I'm just gonna make it a little bit better, and then like put those. I don't like to call them limits, but I do feel like at
Mhm.
some point, like instead of snowballing, you like put that stop, and so you don't snowball anymore.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good suggestion.
Yeah.
Mm.
Um. Okay, so I would love to hear. This is just me being nosy now. Where do you see your career in 5 years? How would you like your services and company to develop in the next 5 years coming up?
I would love to grow within a creative entrepreneur who is who has made their goal happen. So I love working with creatives, musicians, artists, any form of art that you can do. I like just watching you do it. And so
Respect.
if I can insert myself in the tax piece, then I feel like we're both winning.
Yeah.
So I would love to see one of my creative entrepreneurs like make it big and then me just be right there to be their support. So being an independent consultant to a large brand, a large name, or an entrepreneur who has worked their way there is something that I would really love to see myself doing in 5 years.
Okay, all of you artists, all you
Mm.
entrepreneurs, everybody, did you hear JC? She's looking for you.
We're going to the top, baby.
She is genius magic. Go find her right now. I'm excited for you, and I'll definitely be sending off some good vibes to you on your journey. I mean, we're definitely going to be working together in the future, so I'm not worried about losing you, but I
Yeah.
just am so excited to see your passion and your purpose come to fruition and for you to achieve those dreams because you deserve it. It's going to be freaking awesome.
Thank
Well, we
you.
are going to close off our interview today. I wanted to ask you, as your final question, what it is that you would like to be known for.
Defying the odds. And I say that because I was a single mom at 16. I was a teen parent. And I remember going to my counselor, and she was so instrumental in helping me graduate. She was also a woman of color. She was a Delta. I feel like I should just like throw all of that out there. And she was like, the Black woman to like, it seemed like to look up to. And she like helped me so much graduate. And I remember going into her office and saying, I don't want to be a statistic. And she said, then don't be. And so from then on, I've just done my one mores and I keep it pushing and, you know, give my best at everything that I do.
Ooh. I feel that not wanting to be a statistic thing, I had that in my brain since I was in elementary school.
Yeah.
It shaped so many of my decisions growing up, so many of the things that I did and didn't do, so many of the people that I hung out with and didn't hang out with, so many of the things that I, such a real thing. I wish we had more time to talk about that, but
and we're all going to be a statistic in some sense, but
yeah,
it was just
but not
that
the stereotypical
typical, exactly. Black women dropped out of high school, had a kid at 16, on welfare all her life. Like, I wasn't about to be that.
Yes. And you're not. You're so great. I'm so happy that I know you. It's one of those things that like, I just like, you follow those people on the internet and you're like, oh, I'm so happy your posts come up in my feed, but it's a whole nother thing to just, I feel like our connection is just gonna keep growing. And I'm just so grateful that you made the time to come on the show today. Thank you so much. For those of you that are looking to have, will you tell us your handle?
Yeah, so it's JC Morgan on Facebook, and then J.C. Morgan on Instagram. Beautiful. And you can also find all of my links on Linktree. So if you go to Linktree, they spell it weird. I don't know why, but linktr.ee/. So my username is TaxBay. Okay.
TaxBay.
TaxBay here. TaxBae. Little known fact, Bay stands for best accountant ever. But since I try to be cute sometimes. Sometimes I put on my makeup to be TaxBay.
Double entendres with your Linktree. I love it. Yeah, yes. We'll have all of those here in the show notes so that y'all can go out and find JC and follow her and be just as inspired as I am by her every day. So thank you so much for being on the show with me today. I can't wait for, I know all of your offers and your services are so plentiful and full that you're just going to be changing people's lives and businesses left and right. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing everything that you did with us today. And thank you to all of you who came to listen and watch. I'm so grateful for you. Super excited that we have all these episodes dropping for season 3 of Women of Color and Confidence. We will be back in a couple of weeks with brand new episodes. But until then, thank you so much for joining us today and see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.